Hey guys, Jim here with another video for you. This is 50 Years in Film, 2005. But before we begin, at the end of this video, if you like what you see, please consider giving me a thumbs up, a possible subscribe, but most importantly, leave comments below. Let me know how you feel about this video, how you feel about these films from this year. Now, before we begin into this, I'm going to give the normal caveats. These are not all the films from 2005, far from it. These are simply the films that I own in my collection at the time of the filming of this video. Also, before we begin, I want to stress, this is not a ranking video of any kind. This is strictly, again, just a recap of some of the films that came out that particular year. And also, before we begin, I want to straighten up a little bit of housekeeping here. On the last video, 2004, I don't know how many of you actually saw it, but in about halfway through that video, I was doing the science fiction and I was like, and without a doubt, and then I got kind of confused and I said, oops, I almost made a major mistake. Well, this is the mistake I almost made. 2004, I meant to grab this off the shelf. The Aviator. Directed by Martin Scorsese with an all-star cast, including Leonardo DiCaprio, Cate Blanchett. It's a really good movie. This movie's about Howard Hughes, okay? But instead of grabbing this movie off the shelf, I accidentally grabbed Avatar and almost threw that down. And if you notice on the thumbnail for that video, Avatar's in the collage of movies. So, yeah, I almost had a serious brain fart in that video. So from 2004, Aviator. Okay, now we're going to start 2005 like we always do. We're going to jump around in genre. We're going to start off with some comedies. The first one on the list, Hitch, starring Will Smith, Kevin James, and Eva Mendes, directed by Andy Tennant. This was a very successful film at the time. This is my wife's. That ought to tell you how I feel about it. Next, The Longest Yard, starring Adam Sandler, Chris Rock, and Burt Reynolds, directed by Peter Siegel. This is the remake of the 1974 classic starring Burt Reynolds. This one is definitely different. It has the same basic story, but this one is more Adam Sandler comedic in tone. The original one was a comedy drama. I absolutely love the original 70s version. I grew up with it. I like this movie. Then we have The 40-Year-Old Virgin, starring Steve Carell, Seth Rogen, Paul Rudd, and Catherine Keener, directed by Judd Apatow. I friggin' love this movie. This movie's hilarious. No matter how many times I see it, it still makes me laugh, especially the unrated cut. I know a lot of the jokes in this movie have not aged well. I still find it absolutely hysterically funny. And then, Wedding Crashers, starring Owen Wilson, Vince Vaughn, Isla Fisher, Rachel McAdams, and Christopher Walken. This is one of my favorite comedies ever. Again, like 40-Year-Old Virgin, I can watch this over and over and over and just laugh my ass off. These two are hysterically funny in this. Vince Vaughn has never been funnier than he is in this movie. I love Wedding Crashers. And then we have Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, starring Robert Downey Jr., Val Kilmer, Corbin Burnson from L.A. Law of all places, and Michelle Monaghan. Written and directed by Shane Black. This was the little sleeper. This movie did not make a wave at all at the box office. It was barely released. And then it got released on video and cable, and it slowly has gained a cult following over the years. I absolutely adore this movie. I think it is hysterically funny. Robert Downey Jr. credits this movie as really launching his comeback. He never would have been cast in Iron Man if it wasn't for this. And Val Kilmer playing Gay Perry, it's one of his best roles, and he absolutely kills it. I love, love, love Kiss Kiss Bang Bang. Now we're sliding into drama. And winner of Best Picture that year, Crash. With an all-star cast featuring Sandra Bullock, Don Cheadle, Brendan Fraser, Ryan Philippe, Lorenz Tate. Directed and written by Paul Haggis. This movie hasn't aged well at all. It really hasn't. I gotta admit, when I saw it theatrically, I really enjoyed it, and it affected me at the time. And this was the first movie, really, that I really noticed Michael Pena. And he's the best thing about this movie. He's incredible in this movie. And the actors are all good in this movie, okay? It's not that. It's just, yeah, this movie hasn't aged well at all. We'll leave it at that. And then we have Syriana, starring George Clooney in his Academy Award-winning performance for Best Supporting Actor, Jeffrey Wright, and Matt Damon. Directed by Stephen Gaghan, who wrote the script for Traffic, among others. This movie is similar to Traffic in a way, but this is all about the CIA and their meddlings in the Middle East, and it's a very solid drama. Speaking of the Middle East dramas, Jarhead. Starring Jake Gyllenhaal, Jamie Foxx. This is a decent movie. It's not the best, but it's decent. Sam Mendes directed this. I'm sorry. Again, it's your standard middle of the road military drama. I don't know if I would call this a war movie, even though it does deal with the Gulf War, because the whole point of this movie is these Marines going stir crazy for sitting around basically doing nothing. Again, decent movie. And then we're going to a 4-pack that I just got. We're in action now with Domino, directed by the late great Tony Scott, starring Keira Knightley, Mickey Rourke, Edgar Ramirez, and oh Jesus, I'm having a brain fart. The two Jokers from Beverly Hills 90210, Brian Austin Green and Ian Ziering. That's right. This is a batshit crazy movie, okay? Very divisive. A lot of people don't like this movie at all. I love it. It is incredibly crazy, okay? And the more you watch it, the crazier it gets. I'll never hear the song Mama Told Me Not to Come the same way again after seeing this movie. Again, very strange, very bizarre, very entertaining. And then we have Mr. and Mrs. Smith, directed by Doug Liman, starring Brad Pitt, Angelina Jolie, and Vince Vaughn. I absolutely love this movie. I think this movie's hilarious. It is just so good. And of course, this is the movie that these two got together on. They swear up and down to this day that it was strictly platonic until after this movie, but you can see the chemistry between these two the first time I saw this movie, even before they came out as a couple, I was like, yeah, these two are definitely screwing. Yeah, I love this movie. I think it's hilarious. It's great. Then we're switching gears. We're back to the Harry Potter collection. And this time, it is Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire. Like all the other ones, haven't seen it. Now we're switching over to the superhero / comic book movies. We're starting off with Fantastic Four, starring Jessica Alba, Chris Evans, This movie's a piece of garbage. But this movie is not. From the Dark Knight trilogy, the first installment, Batman Begins. Directed by Christopher Nolan, starring Christian Bale, Morgan Freeman, Liam Neeson, and Michael Caine. This was the first installment of what became Christopher Nolan's Dark Knight trilogy. I went and saw this theatrically, but I had very low expectations, even though the reviews were good, because quite frankly, the last couple of Batman movies left a very, very, very sour taste in my mouth, especially Batman and Robin. And I gotta admit, I was also a little skeptical about Christian Bale playing Batman. As usual, I was dead wrong. Batman Begins is a great movie. Christian Bale is great as Batman. And Christopher Nolan's Batman trilogy is incredible. And then, another DC property, Constantine, starring Keanu Reeves. Sorry, zoomed in too much there. Rachel Weisz, Tilda Swinton, and Shia LaBeouf. Directed by Francis Lawrence. This was a sleeper hit. It's okay. I like it. It's entertaining for what it is. Apparently now, 20 odd years later, they're talking about finally making a sequel to this. So, because now Keanu Reeves, he's got carte blanche. He can basically get anything greenlit at this point in his career. And if they do a follow-up to Constantine, yeah, I'll check it out. Again, like a couple of the other movies from this particular part, I like it. I don't love it. And then we have A History of Violence, directed by David Cronenberg, starring Viggo Mortensen, Ed Harris, Maria Bello, and William Hurt. A lot of people don't realize this movie is based on a graphic novel. And I love this movie. I absolutely love it. I think it's one of Cronenberg's best. I think Viggo Mortensen is great in this movie. Ed Harris is great in this movie, but William Hurt is incredible in this movie. He's only in this movie for about 10-15 minutes, and he got an Academy Award nomination for it. That ought to tell you how good he is in this movie. But A History of Violence, it's a great, great movie. If you've never seen it, please check it out. In the last graphic novel movie that we have, and it's probably my favorite of the bunch, Sin City. Directed by Robert Rodriguez and Frank Miller. Based on the graphic novels from Frank Miller. With an all-star cast of Bruce Willis, Jessica Alba, Benicio del Toro, Mickey Rourke, the list goes on and on and on. I absolutely love Sin City. And when I saw this movie, I could not believe the visuals. It just blew me away. This is not my favorite comic book movie ever, okay? Or best movie based on a comic book, okay? But I still think this is the best looking adaptation of a comic book. This looks like the novels come to life on screen. And it was groundbreaking at the time. And it's been followed many times since. But the first one, Sin City, it's an incredible, incredible film. Now we're switching gears, and we're going into sci-fi. And we're starting off with Serenity. This is my steelbook, written and directed by Joss Whedon, starring Nathan Fillion, Alan Tudyk, Adam Baldwin. I absolutely love Serenity. This was a follow-up to Firefly, the TV series that premiered, about 5 years earlier. And that Fox totally screwed the pooch with and messed up when they released it. And it became a cult following once it hit video. I love every moment of Firefly and Serenity. You don't need to see Firefly to enjoy this movie. But if you enjoyed Firefly, chances are you've already seen this. But this movie is a nice way to wrap the series up. I love it. And then we have War of the Worlds, directed by Steven Spielberg. Oh, what do you know? It's the same thing on both. Never mind. Directed by Steven Spielberg, starring Tom Cruise and Tim Robbins. I almost put this in with the horror movies because this is damn near a horror movie, and it's probably the closest thing to a horror movie that Spielberg has ever done. Especially theatrically, this was a great experience. Seeing this theatrically, yeah, this movie played like a rock concert. It was so much fun to watch. I still really, really like this movie, but I don't love it as much as most people do. But the biggest science fiction movie that year, without a doubt, we're back to Star Wars. And this time, it's Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith. Directed by George Lucas, starring Ewan McGregor, Natalie Portman, and Hayden Christensen. Hey, guess what? There's finally a prequel that I like, because I do like this movie. I like it a lot. I would go so far as to say that this is probably one of my favorite Star Wars movies overall, except for the last 10 seconds of the movie when Darth Vader finally gets put together and stands up and says, "And Padme?" And he says, "But you killed her." "No!" And he whines like a little bitch. Oh, God, that annoyed the hell out of me, and it still does. But other than that, yeah. I had been waiting for so long, and we finally got what I was waiting for as a child, seeing how Darth Vader literally became Darth Vader and how him and Obi-Wan Kenobi had their fight. And I will admit, it lived up to my expectations. I really, really, really like Episode 3. Now we're sliding into horror. We're going to start off from my Saw collection, the second installment, Saw 2. Saw was a sleeper hit, came out of nowhere, and of course they greenlit a sequel. But what a lot of people don't know is the script for Saw 2 was originally not a Saw movie. They retrofitted it at the last second and added all the Jigsaw elements. Originally, it had a totally different plot. I don't like Saw 2 as much as most. There are things in this movie that I really do like, and there's parts in this movie that are incredibly hard to watch, aka the needle pit. Oh my God. That's an all-timer. That's just gnarly on so many levels. Again, I don't hate Saw 2. It's one of the better sequels. But I certainly don't hold it in the same regard as the original. And then we've got The Devil's Rejects, written and directed by Rob Zombie, starring Sid Haig, Bill Moseley, Sherry Moon Zombie, and William Forsythe. Okay, here we go. I love Rob Zombie as a musician. I was a huge White Zombie fan. I'm not that big of a fan of his as far as his films go. I love this movie, and I shouldn't, because this movie is hard to like. It is gnarly, it is unrelenting, it is gritty, it is just, it's hard to watch. That's why I like it so much. It's a throwback to the Grindhouse movies from the 70s. Kind of like the way House of a Thousand Corpses was. I really enjoyed House of a Thousand Corpses up until the last 10 minutes of it when Dr. Satan showed up. Then it was just too off the rails for me. Luckily, they don't include any of that. This is a direct continuation of that film, but it ditches that angle and focuses on these three batshit crazy people and the crazier sheriff who is chasing them. Killer soundtrack in this movie. Definitely Rob Zombie's best movie, in my opinion. And then we've got High Tension from France. Directed by, I believe it's Alexandre Diaja. I want to double check before. Yes, I was right. Alexandre Diaja. This movie's insane. This was released in France a year or two before it came across. They were going to originally just put this out on video, and then Lionsgate purchased the rights and released it as Hot Tension, or High Tension. It was originally Hot Tension. Soaked a boatload of money into an advertising campaign, and this movie flopped. Came and went in a heartbeat. I didn't see it until it came out on video. This is a wild movie, man. It's a wild movie. I like it a lot. But this one definitely took me by surprise. The Descent. Directed by Neil Marshall. This movie's insane. Insanely good. Unfortunately, this is the theatrical version. It is the uncut version. I'm sorry. Originally, my wife had the theatrical version, and I replaced it. I forgot, because the version that you guys in the UK got is, without a doubt, my preferred version than that crap that they released in the US. But this movie's insanely claustrophobic, tense. It's great. But I saved this one for last. Land of the Dead. Directed by George A. Romero. Written by George Romero as well. And starring Simon Baker, Asia Argento, John Leguizamo, and Dennis Hopper doing his best Donald Rumsfeld impression. Land of the Dead is not my favorite horror movie of this year. It's definitely not my favorite movie of this year. The reason why I saved it for last is because when I found out that Romero was releasing a zombie film theatrically for the first time in 20 years, and not only that, but had a studio behind it, I was over the top excited. And a lot of that has to do with the success of Shaun of the Dead and 28 Days Later that came out a year earlier. I really like this movie. I don't think it holds a candle to the other three original Dead trilogy, Night, Dawn, and Dead. However, like I said, as a fan, somebody whose very first horror movie was Night of the Living Dead, and whose favorite horror movie of all time is Dawn of the Dead, the idea of seeing this movie was so exciting to me, and I did. I saw it day one, and I loved it. I found it a little bit lacking because, again, it's rated R, and I was a little bit turned off by some of the CG effects, but there are some really good practical effects in this movie as well. And then this movie came out on DVD, and they released the uncut version. And I thought, why, oh why wasn't this the version that was released theatrically? Because the unrated version of this movie is so much better, and it feels like a Romero zombie film. I really enjoy this movie. And even though there is slight disappointment every time I watch it, I will always be grateful that George Romero finally got a studio to give him a chance to bring one of his zombie epics to life. And that's how we're going to end 2005. The other thing I wanted to mention about 2005, other than some really good movies this year, 2005 will always be one of my favorite years of all time, because miracles upon miracles happened that year. Something I never thought would ever happen. My beloved Chicago White Sox won the World Series that year, and they haven't been worth a damn since. But that's how we're going to end 2005. I hope you guys enjoyed this. If you did, please give me a thumbs up, a possible subscribe. Most importantly, leave me those comments. Let me know how you feel about these films and how you feel about this video. So until the next one, I think I'm going to take the weekend off. We'll get back at this on Monday. So you guys, I hope everyone has a great weekend. And I am going to post one little thing in my community tab tomorrow, and maybe a little short film, because tomorrow is 420. Have a great one, guys.